Hey, I just got a notice that nobody can hear. And I see that's Justin coming in. Justin, if you can tell me if you can hear now. Now you can. Isn't that great? We did a whole lot of talking and nobody heard it. But that's the way things go in the live streaming world. Sorry about that. So just to back up a little bit, say a couple things. Live 12 came out. Awesome. End of February is when you can see it. Check the Ableton.com website. Um, they always do this thing where before a new version comes out, if you buy the current version, you get it for a 20% discount and then a free upgrade to the new one when it comes out. Also, I had mentioned that my name is Jason Goodyear. I run the Santa Fe Ableton user group, and I teach at the Santa Fe Community College. So if you're in New Mexico, in like the Santa Fe or maybe Albuquerque, Los Alamos area, Espanola. Um, I have a class that starts in about 2 weeks called Intro to Ableton Live. Um, if you go to bit.ly/SFCC audio, which I am going to just put into the chat, you can see actually all the audio classes that are available at the Santa Fe Community College for the spring. And if you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat or you can comment on the Facebook event page or the Santa Fe Ableton user group Facebook page. And I'll get in touch with you and we can figure out how we can get you into the class. So um, let's talk 12. 12, there are many, many, many new things in 12, and we'll take a peek at some of them. But, if you look online, you'll be able to find videos for everything already because, I'm a certified trainer. They gave all the certified trainers early access. And so they all started making videos. So you can see videos about all sorts of stuff. You can see love, you can see hate, because everybody goes on the internet to hate. And there's a ton of good information out there, and there's a ton of great changes in the software. So instead of doing that, I decided that tonight what I'm going to do is just make a simple little beat, just make a simple little song using the new tools that are there in Ableton Live to do this stuff. And so what I'm going to do is realize that I forgot to open up my notes, and I'm going to open up my notes, and I'll be able to know what I'm doing as I'm doing it. All right. So let's take a peek at Ableton Live here. So this is Live 12, and immediately it doesn't really look all that different from Live 11. If you zoom in on it, you'll see little things like they changed the corners and they made the faders bigger and a whole bunch of visual things that are a little bit different. I like them. All the changes that they put in kind of like clean it up a little bit. Like over here on the mixer, there used to be all these buttons that you would hit to, say, oh, I want to see the input output, I want to see the sends and returns and stuff like that. And now there's just like one button that you hit, and if you, boo, okay, not showing up for me. So at any rate, somebody was complaining about this on the beta testing thing just today, that it's a little it was a little hard for them to get these things to open up. So great start to the demo. All right, trust me, the software is awesome. But there are a couple things, how like when an app comes out, you always are like, why am I going to buy this? And there's like two things definitely for me that I was like, take my money now. And one of them was, if you've worked in live a long time, you do your thing, like you come up with your ideas in the session view, you like you record them over to the arrangement view, and then you go back to the session view to do your mixing, unless you want to do your mixing over here just using the numbers. Um, and so the thing was, you hit the tab key going back and forth between arrangement and session all the time, except now, if you do Command Option M, you get a mix window in the arrangement view, which makes total sense because when you're in the arrangement view, that's where you're editing things, laying out the track, actually arranging the track. So that's when you want to be able to mix. Now, there are also down at the bottom, there are a couple different windows that you can open up. These work on both the arrangement side and the session view. You can show your instrument, and again, previously, to see like then the clip, you could either click on the clip or you could do like a shift tab and that would show you the clip. Same thing, you can go back and forth between the two. Now you can hit that button and you can see in the clip and you can see the instrument at the same time. So for me, that was like, take my money now. Because one thing that I've liked about Ableton Live with their releases, um, last couple, 10, 11, 12, is that a lot of the things they do are kind of like problem solving things. People were like talking about, it's a little challenging to mix, and it's like, well, okay, so now we're going to make it easier to mix. So I like those kind of things, and works really well. So, like I said, we'll see some other things as we go through here. And I'm just going to do some stuff using the new tools. All right, bring that back up. So, one thing that hasn't changed that much is audio clips. If you look at an audio clip, it still looks pretty much the same in the different things that you're going to see over here compared to like Live 11. There are some little differences, the reverse button says something now, and quantize is like right here. So there's actually a quantize tab if you want to quantize stuff. That used to be envelopes, so you could do automation. Now there's an envelopes tab right here. And you click it there, and then you get all your stuff just immediately right at the bottom. That frees up more space over here so they could add quantize in. But that's the audio clip. Looking in MIDI clips, there's a lot more different. You've got notes, you also have envelopes here, and then MPE for any instruments that have polyphonic expression. And then you got a bunch of other stuff. This is pretty the same. This is pretty much the same. But we've got a pitch and time section, a section that has modifications of the notes you've already put in, and a section that generates notes. So in other words, you can open up a clip and you can just ask the clip to generate notes for you, which is really cool. So I'm going to do this thing now, and this is kind of like how I would actually start. Oftentimes with a drum part, I will just start off with a kick and snare. I'll just put kick and snare in, and then I'll add other stuff to it. I'm going to unfold this so we can see like all the different tracks in here, or excuse me, different sounds in here. And this is what I have. Very, very simple. So over here, we've got a bunch of generators that do different things. Again, I can't go through everything tonight. But everything from like MIDI generators to, coming up with ideas and generating things. I'm going to stick with the rhythm one. One thing that's cool about the rhythm one is you can go in here and you can grab an instrument. Like I'm just going to do a hi hat, grab the closed hat. It spits out some notes. Nothing exciting, just one, two, three, four. But there's various different patterns that you can pull up here. You can change the step duration. I'm going to set this to 16th notes. And I've got various different patterns I can pull up. You can say, like, how dense do you want it? If you turn the density all the way up, it's just going to fill it. I'm going to make it less dense. I'm going to change the steps to something off, like 7, just so that it creates something a little bit less predictable. And I'm just going to flip this around until I see something that kind of, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, we'll try. No. One of the things about this then is you spend a lot of time, it's like choosing a patch. You spend a lot of time trying, like, okay, just for the sake of it, we'll just stick with like this one. But that's it. You want some hi-hats, you can just twist a couple buttons and it spits, twist a couple knobs and it spits it out. And then you can go in here and you can modify it. It's not like a computer making music for you. It gives you an idea and then you go and adjust it to get what you want out of it. Um, so one other thing that we're going to make use of right now is a couple new tools in the browser. Now, the browser is very different now, and the browser is the thing in the beta testing that people are fighting about the most. They came out with this new idea for the browser that's based around filters. So, like, if you look into audio effects now, or if you look into, say, Max for Live, there's no folders of things anymore. In Max for Live, there's not a folder that says MIDI and a folder that says audio. It's just a big list. And if you look in some of these lists, like sounds, it's enormous. And then there's a show more button. And so if you're to just try to swipe through this, finding something, it just doesn't work very well at all. But that's kind of the point because there are filters here. So if I wanted to look and find, say, like a bass sound and then say, like, it's an 808 and it's distorted, and then it'll like filter it down and you can find a thing like that. Some people love it. So far, in my experience, most people don't. Um, the people I've talked to who are kind of on the team that are doing it through the beta thing seem really confident that everybody's going to love it. And so we'll see what happens. But they're getting a lot of feedback that, personally, what I think is it's awesome, but it shouldn't be the way the browser runs. It should be like an extra thing. So things are still in folders, and you can just go to your favorite folder to find something, or you can use the filters, or both, you know. But so we're going to spend time in the browser, and we're actually going to do something different in the browser. So if I'm sitting here, I've got my little drum loop, and I think, well, that's cool, but I want more of an electronic kit. So I'm gonna go into my drums, and I just know that if I scroll down a little bit, here's the 606 core kit. And so, nothing fancy about that. I just went and grabbed the kit. And so that's great. Now I want a kick drum that's different than that. Ordinarily, if you wanted to do that in 11, what you would do is you would go to the hot swap button, and it'll show you the kicks. But unlike with the filter thing, it's just like every kick. There's nothing about it that's filtering it out. It's just every kick. Now, if I hit that kick and I think I kind of like that kick, but it's not quite right, there is now a similar sounds button here. And what that does is it takes that sound, and instead of just giving you a list of like all the kicks, it's kick samples that are like that. And so if you hit it, it's going to give you a list of things and rankings that basically are supposed to be meaning how much is this sound like the sound that you used to choose. And, you know, some of them are. That one's pretty close. And everything like that. And so this works. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Is because again, it's just giving you ideas, and it definitely focuses you better than just hitting the hot swap button and just like having to go through a list of 500 kicks. You find something you like, and you can just filter it down again. Is not to say that there aren't some things about the browser that aren't still there. Like if I know the sample I'm looking for, I can just like type in something that'll give me what I want, and that's what I want. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna drop it in the snare. That's not what I want. There we go. So, but there's a whole other way to do this with a drum kit that's really awesome, is that there's a similar sounds button here. And if you hit that, every pad just has the same control. So if I go to my snare, it cycles through similar sounds. And if I open up the snare, you can actually see in the sampler it's loading different samples. There is also a button up here that will do like the whole kit. So changes out sounds for the whole kit. Now, I went to great lengths to get the kick drum sample I like. And so what you can do here is you can lock any drum, and then you can go and swipe through this, tap through it. Yeah. Yeah, musical video poker. Okay, so I kind of like that one. I could lock the snare and then continue on with the other things, but I'm happy with that as it is. So I just hit this button and everything's locked there. So now it's just back to a regular drum kit. So those are some of the tools that you can use with the browser and stuff like that to get things going the way you want them to be. Let's add in keys now. Now this is another thing that's just me. When I start writing something, I often start with kind of simple things. So like a piano sound or something like that, so I can like hear the music stuff before I go crazy with the patches. With this one, I kind of do like keep the sort of piano-y sound, but it's not quite right. So I'm going to use my filters, and I'm going to go to the instruments, and I'm going to pick, oh, we're in drums, that's why. Piano and keys. And then under character, I'm going to pick, let's try, here, let's do it this way. I'm going to go to sounds, because those are patches from any instrument. So I'm gonna go to sounds, and I am going to go, yikes. Sometimes the filters get a little crazy. See, it's stuck on, there we go. That was entirely my fault. One thing that I kind of don't like about the browser myself is this filters thing can get really big, and then you can only see like half the browser worth of results. And I'm the first to admit that I'm kind of new with the browser and everything. So, but I want piano and keys. Let's look what we find under acoustic. Here's this broken piano. I'm familiar with that one. I'm going to set it to close and bright. And so it's just a little more acoustic sounding, and it's a little more sort of, I guess, crunchy is the word I would use. Bring it down a little bit. And so, again, that was just using the similar sounds thing. You can, as you can see, you can just click on one thing, like I want a piano, or you can add things to your search to like narrow it down more, which is very useful. So now, one of the things that has changed more than anything is MIDI clips. There are tons of changes to MIDI clips that are useful, but also just sick fun. So here's the piano clip. I'm gonna fold it so we just are looking at the notes we're using. This modification section has got tons of things in here that you can do to your clip, to do to the notes in the clip. You know, like we saw with the drum, you can generate notes here, but you can also, you know, use some commands to like change things, add in grace notes, like spit out notes that are arpeggiated, stuff like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, what do I want to do?
Those are all new, all those MIDI effects?
Well, some of them aren't, but they're new in being presented in this situation.
Okay.
You know, um, like this is mostly, you know, like the notes section from 11, but there are some extra things in here like stretching and humanizing and things like that. So some things were somewhere else, but a lot of things are just new.
I saw they changed a lot of the ways they do like probability and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you can see that down here. They call like the probability thing now deviation, which I kind of like. It's deviated. Okay. So you can still do a lot of things the same way. You know, like if I wanted to like shorten all these notes, I could still do the same thing where I like just select them all and go like that, you know. So not a lot has gone away here. It still works. You know, now I got less sustain on it, which I like for this particular situation. So if, for instance, we did the arpeggiate, and a lot of times if you don't have anything selected, you know, just making a change will like hit everything. You know, if you did like just select a few notes, you could do something to just those few notes. But if you want to affect everything, so like what's the distance? I'm actually going to make the distance just like, let's go to 6. And then we'll take this to, 24th might be interesting. You know, just like that. Is cool. And it just spits out an idea. And you can always undo or change it to something else. Um, there's a cool one in here that's just called Recombine. Now, there's always been, looking at 11 and 10 and 9 and everything, you could shuffle notes, flip them around. You could mirror the notes, flip the lows high and the highs low, and you get cool stuff by doing that. But now there's this recombine, which is kind of like the pattern things when I put in patterns. You can just drag this back and forth and it'll do stuff to it. And I like it because I play in chords and, you know, and then it revoices them to come up with something else, you know. And that's honestly one of the things I've always loved about live is that um, it's a good like sort of collaborator. You can do stuff and it can give you feedback. Um, so I love things like that. And then there's some other just cool, weird little tools, and one that I've really enjoyed is the strum. And so this lets you strum notes like you're playing a guitar, and there's just a top and a bottom that you can drag, and you can watch it. It moves the notes, and you get, yeah. And you can also take this back to like have them start before the note, and you can change the tension to like bend the slope. So that's something it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the drum and the keys that I did in this little piece. Um, the next thing, like all good releases, there is a new synth, which is always good to have something to play with. This one, it's called Meld. It does all sorts of different sounds. I'm using a little bass thing here, but all sorts of different sounds. In terms of sound, they came out with a new one in 11 a short while ago that's called Drift. This sounds kind of sort of like Drift sometimes. But what the thing that makes it a little different is there aren't really like oscillators in the common sense. Like you can set this to basic shapes. And, then you can choose, do you want like a sine wave or a square wave or something like that? And you can get that, but it's more about they call them engines. So instead of like a simple oscillator or a wavetable or something like that, there's just a thing that makes sounds in a certain way. And then if you choose, like if we're using the square fifth, you can see there's a knob for fifth amount and a knob for pulse width. But if we pick something else like squelch, there's a knob for amount and a knob for feedback. So there's always two controls that change something about something. So it's less precise, it's sort of more intuitive. You don't have to like know all the terminology and concepts and everything like that to make a sound. You can just pull stuff up and play with it. That being said, there are tons of other things involved. There are a couple different filters that sort of follow the same philosophy. Yeah, you do have the regular analog filters, but then there's some other crunchy stuff put in there and some resonators, and again, sort of a different, more intuitive response. Excuse me, different, more intuitive tools. Um, there are two banks of envelopes, and it's possible to either have different banks or you can link the banks so that the same ADSR works for both of them. And there's just a lot going on in this instrument, including a matrix, because every synth now has to have a matrix which says this controls this and this controls that. But one thing that's nice about this is it has this thing. There's a lot of thought between linking the two engines, and like the envelopes and stuff. And also, if you're going crazy here with saying, this LFO does that and this LFO does that, you can hit this button and then it copies the same settings over to B. So if you had like a certain LFO that's affecting the filter, it can affect both filters the same way. Um, Likewise, I really like this, which is if you set up a modulation here for A, when you go look at B, you have some of the modulators over here, which makes it really easy to assign something you're doing in A to B. So again, like I said, tons of videos online that walk through here. I'm a huge fan of Madeline Bloom, and her web presence is Sonic Bloom, and she does really good job. I was looking at some of her stuff. She does a really good job at saying, "Here's this device," and just like walks through it and every little thing it can do. And so, if you're looking for somebody to, if you're looking for a recommendation of where to go to look at things like that, she's a great one, Sonic Bloom. Okay. Now the other thing that made me be like, take my money now, is is a certain effect. And the effect is called roar. And roar, we're going to put on the drums here. Roar is the simplest way to describe roar would be like a saturator. But there's a lot more going on than just being a saturator. So did you ever use the saturator in live? Crunch things up a little bit? Yeah. So I'm pretty sure we're the only two people. I'm just doing this in this way because, in case somebody's out there, um, yeah, in case somebody's out there, I guess New Year's Eve was not the best choice, or New Year's Day was maybe not the best choice. I had friends who said they were coming. They're probably sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you can see when you look at it, um, it does look similar to the saturator. There's drive and tone and amount and bias and frequency. If you look under here, there's a bunch of different algorithms like tube preamps and diode clipper, bit crusher. A lot of these digital clip, a lot of these things is just they're in the saturator, the same thing. Um, but there's some extra weird stuff. Uh, and then you've got either a single stage or you have two stages in serial, which means that one runs into that one. Or you've got two stages in parallel, which means they're processed separately. You've got multi-band, mid-side, something about feedback we'll talk about a little bit later. I'm going to just go to multi-band and just fiddle with this a little bit. Um, got all three bands have a level, so you can turn them up and down, and an amount for the shaper, and then this drive just pushes the whole thing. And so I'm gonna turn off the low and I'm gonna turn off the high, so we just hear the mids. I'll solo it. So if we look here, I'm gonna set this to, let's do diode. So I'm gonna pull up, there's some of these new ones, shards. You know, it has a little wiggle to it, a little variation. It's really cool. Here's rectifiers. That's cool, but I'm working on the mid-range, so I'm gonna adjust our bias, grab it right. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to go back to the good old tube preamp. And bring that down a little bit.
So you use the roar just on the mid frequencies and
Right. So right now I've just used it on the mids. If I turn on the low and the high, you know, that's just doing it to that. And here's my drive button knob. But I am gonna go to the low. And yeah, I like this one. That's kind of nice. It's cool, but it's giving me the pitch that I don't want. That's kind of cool. And then for the high, I'm gonna pick shards. And then I'm gonna turn it down. Maybe bring the filter down a little too. And now I'm gonna wait for the grinder. Anyhow, not the greatest work I've ever done, but there's a couple other cool things in here. One is just a compressor, simple one knob compressor, and the other is a dry wet, which you're gonna end up using. You're gonna, cause like when you make these adjustments, you tend to go overboard, and then, you know, dial it to 60%. Sounds just fine. There is, of course, in this also modulation. We could sit here and assign, using the matrix, we could assign the LFO to something. Like, what is it? Yeah, that's not really doing too much. We'll assign the frequency to the LFO. And now that's following that. This has a cool little morphing thing where you can take your LFO and change the way it behaves. I really like that. You can also smooth out your LFO. But I like the way that like hits right there in the middle. That's really good for this one. Now, and then this feedback thing is exactly what it says. It is feedback. So if you start it up and adjust it, and so you can do it with like time or sync to the tempo, triplets dotted. It's kind of like the echo, you know, dotted 16th notes. And then you can adjust the frequency that it affects. You know, you can make your bandwidth narrow. The very important button with the feedback is this button right here, because that button puts a fade out on the feedback. So it doesn't just feedback, it like puts a slope on it so that when you stop, it doesn't continue feeding back, but it fades out. Roar, roar, I just love roar.
Like sneeze out of it.
Oh yeah, man. You can take something that's okay, and it works on anything. You can put it on drums, you can put it on synths, you can put it on vocals. Use the LFO to like lively it up a little bit, and it's just awesome. Um, so couple other things that are definitely necessary to mention. One is just one of these fix things that I was talking about. Now, I was just showing you how you can use built-in LFOs to mod things in the Roar, but I'm going to just go ahead, I'm going to add the regular LFO device, which you can just map to anything. Um, and so I'm going to do a likely thing somebody would do and turn down the depth a little bit. And I'm going to map this to the drive. And you can see now, there it is going. It's doing what it's supposed to do. But if you've done this before and you look at it, you'll notice something that's a little bit different. In the past, you would get a little red dot on it, and when you try to move it, it would say, "No, Max for Live is controlling this. You can't move it." Now it's not mapped rigidly. It's a modulation. So you can take once you map the LFO to it, you can see right there it says mod. You can like adjust your settings afterwards. And that's the same, like I said, same thing with using it anywhere. The LFO is the LFO, it can work on anything, but now it's just a modulation. So no absolute rigidness that gets in your way. And yeah,
Did you download that performance pack?
I did download the performance pack, and I have tried a few things with it. Um, one of my favorite things about the performance pack that I could maybe show you in just a little bit. I got two other things to talk about, and then we can do questions. But the performance pack, one of my favorite things actually comes from this other app I used to have called CliffX, or some people say CliffX. Um, but it had this feature where it would just memorize your whole set, and then you could play with it and mess with it and do different things, and then just click on something and it would put your whole set back to where it started. Which is very cool for performance, but it's also kind of cool for like mixing. If you're like, well, I like the way it is, but I want to try adding this, I want to try adding that, I want to try adding that. And if it doesn't work out, you're sitting there, undo, 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 undo. And if you just sort of like grab it before you do your work and you don't like it, you just hit one button and bam, all the changes go back. And it's kind of insane because it grabs every control of every device on every track, which is a lot. um, Another thing that's definitely worth mentioning is that Live 12 is now what's called scale aware, which means that you always could define a scale on the push, you always could define a scale, you always could define a scale on push, you always could define a scale in a clip. Now there's a scale to assign for the whole set.
Okay.
And so right now it's set to A minor. And if we listen to this, you just get the. I gotta turn off roar just so it's. You can hear the bass and the keys. We went up here and changed this to like E minor. You know. Yep. But it doesn't necessarily do it. If like the bass line all the notes are the same. It's putting it in a different key. So if a better example might be if instead of being an A minor, we went like to A major. Well, you can hear it in the piano. I had a really simple bass line. So, yep. But and then you can do it for any scale. The other thing that's cool about that is there are some devices, MIDI devices, MIDI effects, and then even some instruments that have a scale aware button. So a lot of times a synth will make overtones and harmonics and stuff like that. If you turn on scale aware, it's going to limit them to being in key. So you're not going to get any sort of uh, any sort of harmonics that are not in sync with the whole. I'm sorry, my push just freaked out.
Nothing's gonna be making any like dissonant sounds.
That's the general idea in terms of harmonics. You can, of course, always make dissonant sounds. But so, yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to show was tunings, and I was planning on using the push for that. And now my push is here. We're going to disconnect it. Then we're going to shut it down. But while we're doing that, yeah, the performance pack has got some cool things in it. Um, the arrangement looper. Yeah, I tried that, but I wasn't too thrilled. The performer takes a lot of work. Um, the performer lets you basically edit a controller, and it opened over on my other screen here. But you open up a window and you can add things to your performance thing here, and like knobs and sliders and stuff. So you maybe don't have a push. Maybe you've got like a little Akai box with faders and stuff like that. You can use the performer to like basically make a virtual version of your controller, and then you can assign it to do different things in the set. So you can turn a controller that's maybe not that sophisticated into something that's more sophisticated, which I really like. Um, and then variations is the one that you have that new you can make new variations, and you can make a variation of like everything, and whatever. You can make a variation of everything, and then you know oh, you know what, I put this on an individual track as opposed to the master track where I wanted to put it. But you can make a variation of everything. You can make a variation that includes clips and devices, or you can make one that links to a specific clip or scene. You can see this one is set to meld, and I wanted to have something that affected the whole thing. But yeah, and I'm bummed out that my push appears to just be freaking out, because it's just I was playing the last thing I wanted to talk about was the tuning, and I was playing with the tuning last night way too late. Um, Probably driving my girlfriend crazy, but the tuning is really is really interesting. Um, I just showed how you can set up different keys, And we'll see if our push will come up and connect now. We can set up different keys, but the tuning systems give you all sorts of different tunings, not just different keys, but there's tunings in here that are like from gamelan ensembles. There's tuning from like different places around the world. There's microtonal tunings.
You didn't
They're
have to
all
download that. Like you didn't have to download any of that. It came
it
with the.
comes with it.
Yeah,
And
that's really neat.
oh, all right, control live. I should be able to control live now, and then this will be so much more interesting. No.
Looks like they had a whole bunch on 12.
Oh, it is like there's some. Hey, there we go. All right, my push is connected now. So, what I'm gonna do though is, um, if you want to use a tuning system, yes, find a tuning system. This is another one. There are so many that if I scroll all the way down, we're just at the C's. So there are loads. Now these things that say SCL, that's Scala, SCALA, that's a file format for tuning. But you can just go in here and randomly, sort of pick a tuning. Let's see what Francis is. Just double click on it. You see all these tracks say bypass tuning, which means they're not going to be affected by tuning. Good idea to bypass tuning on the drums. So I'm going to leave that on. I'll turn everything else off. And some of them are just, like just intonation or things like that won't really sound all that different. If I pick like something. And so you can hear that it sounds a little bit in between. And if you look in this now, you can see that this is very different over here in terms of the notes that show up. And in some of these, you're not even going to get notes, you're just going to get like numbers that like kind of give you an idea of where you are in some sort of scale. So there's all sorts of different tuning systems you can use until the software crashes.
Did you know what some of those?
Well, so the thing about it, basically, no, that's not true. I know what some of them are, like the gamelan stuff. I know what that is. Uh, and I, yeah, I know some of it. Here, I have to reopen live. But not all of it. But the thing about it is if we look here. All right. If we pick a tuning system, there's a little button right here that at the moment is taking you to something that is not live yet, but tuning.ableton.com. And the idea is if you load a tuning, you can hit that button and it goes to a website and it tells you about the tuning. Like what is it? Where does it come from? Who like made it? Things like that. So that's really cool. So here's my favorite thing to do with the tuning is I'm just going to grab again acoustic piano.
I
Uh,
like those filters. I don't have any specific complaints like that I could see.
yeah.
Seems like it could all be very useful.
Yeah, the filters are useful, but like I said, my problem is you shouldn't have to use them. You should be able to like I mean, historically speaking, I can't think the last time that live like took something away.
Yeah.
You know, or somebody's got their own workflow and now it's like, yeah, no, you can't do that now. So we've got tuning. This one just sounds kind of out of tune. Um, but one thing that's kind of cool is that if I duplicate this, and this is just my brain at work, I can have two tracks. In fact, maybe I'll pan these left and right. And one is just a regular piano, the other one is the weird tuning. And I forgot to, where are we at? Forgot to turn that on so that both tracks are receiving. But then the more fun thing happens when you like add an echo here. I'm going to put this one to 100% dry, and to make it more obvious, I'll put it at a quarter note, and it goes like this. So it's the regular piano for the first note, and then it's the out of tune one, or not out of tune, it's the different tuning for the echo. And what I was spending tons of time doing last night was adding a little echo onto the original one too, and setting it at less, like maybe 40%. And so there's echo on both of them now. And then if we go into our tuning and find something more get something really kind of horror movie going on. Some of these, so like I said, are less dramatic than others. And I'm trying to just randomly find something weird. Go down. So yeah, that's but I was doing that until like 1 in the morning. Just sitting there. So yeah. And I think the reason I liked it was because it was something recognizable. You know, it was a piano. I don't know, like how it would do, with like that track I had going. If I did something like that, it probably being synthesized would sound a lot like, ooh, it's supposed to sound that way, whereas this sounds like, what's wrong with my piano? And so that's something that I like. Well, we have hit 7, and so that's it for the stream. If you're out there and you just didn't comment, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. And hopefully, if you're in Santa Fe, you'll come by Remix sometime and you'll be able to join us. because we are actually here and we'd love to see you. Thanks a lot.